is that concept so important for us to keep in mind, this idea of sin and judgment as we do our cultural critique?
The knee-jerk response is because it's there in the Bible. We want to bring the whole of the Bible to bear on the whole of culture. And it's not our job to decide which bits of the Bible story we want to keep and which we want to get rid of. And so that's the sort of entry-level answer. The slightly more developed answer is that you can't make sense of, well, either the Bible or contemporary culture really without some sense of where things have gone wrong. And so if you excise sin and judgment from the Bible, you've got a sort of, I guess, a meaningless story in the end, just a wheel spinning in the air with no friction in reality. Like if there's no sin and judgment, then why did Jesus need to die? And then why is the resurrection such good news? And what's the final judgment all about? Like the whole house of cards comes tumbling down if you don't have a robust biblical sense of the human offense against God and God's anger at that offense. And I don't think this is sort of an alien idea to, all the critical theories have a sense of what's gone wrong. They've just got different senses to the Bible sense, and often more superficial senses as well. So there's often a diagnosis of the problem in sort of non-biblical critical theories that say, look, it's to do with the way society is structured or to do with power relations in society. And if we just get that right, then, they wouldn't put it in these crass terms, but essentially we'll get the paradise on earth that we long for. We just got to educate people differently, get education right, or get the structure of society right, or get the economy right, or whatever it is. And then, this was the sort of ideology of the French Revolution, and why one of the reasons why the guillotine was so attractive is that if we can just start from a position where everything's right, then the golden age will be ushered in. If we just get rid of the people who think wrongly, I know it's not great to kill them, but the prize that we're aiming for is so much greater, so much more to be striven for, that it's worth, cracking a few eggs to make the omelette. But the Bible says that you're only scratching the surface. You can do what you want with education, and it's good to try and make it better. And you can do what you want with the economy and society, and it's good to try and make them better. But in that old, hackneyed but really helpful phrase, the heart of the human problem is the problem of the human heart. And, you're never going to really address what's wrong with society and the world unless you bring it down to the level of the human heart. It's an internal problem to all of us, not an external problem out there in the world. And therefore, I think this biblical diagnosis of, the hill that needs to be climbed to make society better is much grimmer in many ways. It's a more sober, it's a darker sense of the challenge that faces us. Because in a sense, the challenge is us. Like biblically speaking, there are no good guys out there trying to save the world. People are doing wonderful things, but that's not the solution, because those people themselves are, carrying around in their hearts this sinful nature, as the Bible puts it as well. And I think, we've seen that in recent years. Even some of the most revered Christian leaders end up damaging themselves and wrecking their churches. And that's not just getting the right leader is not the solution. There is only one solution, and his name is Jesus. Because nothing else gets deep enough to deal with this fundamental human problem, which is sin. So it's a bleak diagnosis. But I think it's also a diagnosis that stands up to scrutiny. There's Chesterton said, didn't he? It's the only empirically verifiable doctrine, sin. But, in the sense that, all these church scandals sort of show that none of us are simply part of the solution. None of us are simply the good guys doing the right thing. And I think views of society that say, there are the good guys out there and there are the bad guys, and we just hope the good guys win because everything that they're doing is great, strain to make sense of the whole of reality. You have to have quite a selective view of reality to think that the only problem is education or some groups of people out there who are ruining it for everyone else. And I think that the biblical view of sin just rings truer if we open our eyes and don't look selectively at what's going on in society. So for all those reasons, I think sin is really, really important to have as part of a full-orbed approach to cultural critique. You can go too far, can't you? You know, some Christian cultural critique seems to know only Genesis 3 and no other chapter of the Bible. And all you're ever doing is denouncing and condemning and rejecting culture. And that's not biblical either.